what you need to do is pack a go bag and take a blanket, because I don't know why I've never been so cold in my life. It's freezing in there. They did give me some warm blankets at one point. Take snacks, because if you get stuck in an ER for 15 hours, you get a little hungry. Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. Okay, guys, this podcast episode is really going to be sort of off the cuff, real and raw, because, things in my life have been a little difficult the last week and a half. So as many of you know, if you follow the podcast, I've been on a little over 2-year journey, my family and I, with my husband, who had 4 strokes, Christmas Day, 2022. And he has been in a total now, this is his 5th rehab. We've been through a lot. And every time I think that I've learned everything, I find out, no, I haven't. And every time I am in a situation where I am sitting in a hospital or an emergency room or, trying to get him to rehab, I think about people out there who have no knowledge of any of this, have never had to navigate it, have not worked in senior living. And I just think how lost and confused and how they must feel. And it breaks my heart. So as with the last time my husband was in the hospital, I just started taking notes on my iPhone of things that, I felt like I wanted to share with y'all on the podcast, and just in hopes that, we're going through all this crappy stuff. Not going to lie, it's really stinks to see someone you love be sick and, all the things. But if some good can come out of it, then, let's do that. Let's focus on the good. And so I'm going to share what's been going on in hopes, like I said, that it could help someone else out there. So what happened on this latest part of the journey, Mark, because his body is compromised because of having 4 strokes, and he does have paralysis on one side. He has apraxia and aphasia of his speech. And so he has a lot going on. But his baseline at home is that he can transfer, which means go from his chair to his wheelchair independently. He can go to the bathroom independently, which is great for us. Now, we never leave him alone, and we have a caregiver. We have my son, who is a saint. He helps so much. And then myself, and then our daughter, when she's home from college, she helps us too. So we have sort of a well-oiled machine going on here. But what happened was, a little over a week ago now, we noticed he was kind of weak. And that night, he went to get in his wheelchair to go to the bathroom, and he slid out of the bed. And so he was on the floor, but he was still strong enough that my son and I knew how to help him position. What you want to do with someone if they're on the floor is get to their knees so that they can push up with either a chair or the bed. The bed was right there. So he was able, with our assistance, to push up, because you don't want to pull someone and hurt them or injure yourself. And so that's what I kept saying to my son is, be careful. We don't want to hurt ourselves. If we have to, we will call 911. But we were able to get him up and get him in his wheelchair. Phew. So the next day, I noticed he had a lot of congestion, and he was having difficulty getting out of his recliner on his own. And it just, throughout the day, I noticed it getting worse. And I had, of course, it's on a Saturday, so I had reached out to his primary care physician, and I was able to get, not with his primary care physician, but someone through the network or whatever, to do like a virtual visit. Well, the doctor was like, you need to take him to a walk-in clinic. Well, that's easier said than done to take someone in his condition to a walk-in clinic. So I called the clinic, and they said, oh, well, we won't be able to see him till probably 8 o'clock at night. and you could bring him now and just sit here for hours. And I mean, that's just not feasible in his current state. So we opted to bring him the next day. But that night, he was trying to get up to go to the bathroom. And I said, wait. And I said, let me get Chris. Our son was standing right by. So we were both trying to help him. And he just was dead weight and slid down to the floor. And thankfully, it was a controlled slide. It's still a fall, but I mean, he didn't injure himself. But he was dead weight. And he's a big guy. And I am short and not strong. Plus, honestly, I didn't want to hurt him by pulling on him. I didn't want my son to be hurt. Our daughter, Abby, was here too. And, this was about, I guess, like 12:30 in the morning, basically. So Mark was like, he didn't want us to call 911. He was, no. And we kept trying to get him up and there was absolutely no way. So I had to call 911 and they came and took 4 of them to pick him up, and they didn't like the way his vitals looked and insisted we go to the emergency room, which was fine. And so, as most of you know, I've shared before, make sure that you tell them to go to the right emergency room, because we always have to go to a hospital that does neurology because of my mistake that I made Christmas Day 2022. I didn't realize that. And Mark was taken to a closer hospital, but they didn't have a neurology department, and he had to be care flighted to another one, which was a whole other story you can listen to on another podcast episode, because I have covered that and also covered it in the book I wrote, Surrounded by Love. So if you want to know our whole story up until this point, Surrounded by Love is your go-to, which will tell you this whole journey, which I won't go into. So basically, we're in the ER. He ended up in the ER for 15 hours because they said they did not have a bed available in the hospital. And I will tell you, it's a very frustrating thing because I can't say, find him a bed, what your hands are tied. All that I could do was just continue to go out and ask for help with different things that he needed and continue asking, can we get him a decongestant? Is there something we can give him because of all the meds he's on? And it was one of these things where I wrote this down because I wanted to share that I was asking from Saturday when I talked to the on-call doctor and we did the virtual visit with, all the way until his second day in the hospital. Can he take a decongestant? Is there something you could give him? Finally, we were told, yes, he could have a decongestant, Mucinex, which is what I wanted him to get because I could hear it all starting to go into his lungs. And still, once he even had that order, it took at least, I think it was 3 times until finally the nurse he had said, oh yeah, let me get that for him. The doctor did approve it. Those kind of things. I mean, I realize I am not going to bash a hospital or bash people because I realize these are human beings. I realize that they're overworked. There's not enough people. I get it. But things like that make me so upset for people who don't have an advocate, because Mark cannot speak for himself. He cannot say, hey, I need a Mucinex. I'm congested. It's settling in my lungs now. He can't do that. And if he were by himself and there was no one to be an advocate, or if his advocate was someone who didn't feel comfortable speaking up, that would be a problem. And so that is something that I wrote over and over and over in my notes, is be an advocate, speak up, be an advocate, speak up, be an advocate and speak up. Ask the questions. I mean, you have to pay attention to every single thing. And if it helps you to write it down, then write it down and write down the date, the time, whatever you ask for. Have a notebook if you need. For me, it's just easier. I use my phone because I have my iPhone in my hand the whole time, and I just make notes in the notes section. Long story short, what he ended up being diagnosed with was just some sort of upper respiratory virus. They did give him antibiotics, and he's still finishing that course of antibiotics. They did give him the Mucinex, and he had a low-grade fever, but he was not positive for anything. So he didn't have COVID. He didn't have the flu. He didn't have pneumonia. There was nothing except a respiratory virus that probably, before he had a stroke would have just like had the sniffles and gone on about life and been fine. But unfortunately for him, at this time of life, it really takes a lot out of him. And then when you're in the hospital and you're laying there, you lose a lot of what you had. And he has worked so hard through therapy to become strong enough to do these things on his own. And now we're starting over, not 100% starting over, but we are starting over. We have to get him strong and we have to get rehab. And that brings me to the other part of this story, which again, be an advocate and speak up. The case manager came and I said to her, I want Mark to go to your in-hospital rehab or inpatient rehab that's 3 hours a day. It's a wonderful rehab. He's been there before. And she said, he's not going to qualify. And I'm like, well, why on earth wouldn't he qualify? And she said, because his diagnosis is weakness. And so I said, the weakness was caused by the virus. And she said, that doesn't matter. His diagnosis is weakness. And I said, again, but he had a virus, which caused the weakness, which the virus affected him this way because he is a stroke survivor. And it was like, this went on probably way too long. But if y'all remember the Who's on First, Abbott and Costello, I don't know if anyone is as old as me, but there was the Who's on First where it's just like there's no sense to be made of this, right? So we went through this and then finally she said, well, I can't change anything in the system. Are you asking me to change? And really got, a bit of an attitude, which I did not appreciate. And so, I was certainly not asking that, but she's telling me you're going to have to send your husband to a skilled nursing facility, a nursing home, basically, where he'll only get 1 hour of rehab a day. And no, you know what? I know what he needs. I've seen what he's gone through. I know how hard he works. On Friday, before becoming sick, he did occupational therapy here in our house. Why would I say, yeah, okay, you're right. Let's go to 1 hour of rehab and he's never going to get back to where he was, when I know what he needs is to go to an inpatient rehab facility where he's going to get 3 hours, and specifically one that has worked with people with strokes. So anyhow, these are the kind of things, I know it would be hard if you don't have the knowledge. It would be hard to even try and have this conversation. So the case manager is supposed to help you. And in my opinion, had I not already known what I know, Mark would have ended up going to the wrong place. But thankfully, I know people and I fought for him to get the right kind of care. So when she left, I called my friend who works at a really wonderful inpatient rehab facility. And I said, here's what happened. And I feel like Mark needs to come to you. And I don't know why he's being declined to go to this place, which we love. And he's been there in the past. And so she came in and she said, I think we can get him approved. And she was willing to do a little extra work, which ended up being pretty easy because Mark still has outpatient rehab. They come to our house and his case manager there was happy to get all the information and pull everything together to show how Mark was prior to having this virus. And so everything was sent to our insurance, which has been, I've said this before, our insurance has been fantastic to pay for rehab. It's Blue Cross Blue Shield, HMO on the exchange. And it costs a lot of money, but it is paying for all this. And good news here, we have hit our deductible for the year. So hallelujah to that. So here we are early March and have hit for the entire family. But anyhow, she came in, she did all the paperwork, did the extra step, and Mark is now at the rehab, which is fantastic. He's getting the 3 hours a day. They know they're stroke certified. They're working with him. And our goal is, once he completes rehab, he comes home and things are just exactly like before he became sick. That's the goal, to get him to baseline. But I mean, to have to go through this kind of fight, and not feel like you're supported when I get it that case managers are busy and everything, but what a disservice. I just can't even say that enough. What a disservice this woman is doing to others, because her attitude was, I don't care. I'm not going to go out of my way to help you. And I'll go ahead and file this, but 99% chance it's going to be declined by your insurance. Well, you know what? Don't even try. I'll find someone else to get him in the right kind of rehab. Let me just say this. He was approved in 24 hours by insurance. So that's pretty fast. And now he's where he should be, getting the kind of help that he needs. I'm just kind of looking at my notes that I wrote down here, just, about being an advocate. And, you really turn into mama bear. That's, my friend said that to me. Carol said, you've gone all mama bear. And I'm like, I have, because, he's my husband, but I feel so protective over him, just as I do over my children. And I am going to, fight to do whatever I can to get him the very best care. And, I made that vow to him that no matter what, and I've told him that before, I will take very good care of, I will always take the very best care of you, and I will fight for you. I mean, the big thing, again, as I said, just kind of, again, looking at my notes, I wrote, advocate, connections, stay on top of things, be a pain in the ass, take notes. You have to do that, and press that call button if someone hasn't come in to help your loved one get to the bathroom or whatever it is that they need. And Mark, because of being so sick, feeling so badly, he couldn't even remember how to press the call button. Now he can do that because he's feeling better, but I could not leave him. And, I realize how hard it is in the hospital. And I just have to say this, and I'm not making a dig at hospitals, but I don't believe that there's any hospital where you can leave a loved one who is sick unattended. So thank God, I don't have family here in Texas. All my family's out of state. Mark's is too. Most of Mark's family has passed away, but I stayed there through the day and night. When I would take a break, it would be because my son Chris would come up, or we'd have Mark's caregiver, Rebecca, come and sit with him. But Mark was never left alone. The only time he was left alone is if I ran down to the cafe, which was never opened. Let me get to that in hospitals. What is up with that? Like, they're open for these really short periods of time and then they close. And I always missed it. But if I ran down to get, a snack or something, I was maybe gone 10 minutes. That was it. And that's the only time he was left alone. But I just feel like it is so important to be able to have, and not everyone has it. I get it. Not everyone has a team of people, whether they're family or friends or whatever, to help. But I think it is so important to try to establish that, to not be all by yourself, because you can't do it. It just breaks my heart to think of someone who's, 85 years old sitting there with their spouse 24/7 and not taking a break and getting any rest, because you don't rest well in a hospital. I can assure you of that. Okay, so this happened. I think this was the fourth night there. I noticed that day I had left for a while, and Mark's caregiver, Rebecca, was there for 4 hours. I left to come home and take a shower and kind of check on things. And when I got back up there, I said, did PT, physical therapy, and occupational therapy come? And she said, no, they didn't come. They said he's being discharged. And I was like, no, he's not. And then I said, did they take his order for dinner? And she said, no, they didn't, because she was there for lunch. So we went out to the front desk and asked about it. And they said, no, we have that he's discharged. Well, he was not discharged. And so there was no dinner coming. So they were able to quickly, get a meal for him. And so he did have dinner. And I inquired as to what the heck was going on, because we were awaiting insurance, which, by the way, If you are waiting for insurance to approve you to go to rehab, the hospital cannot make you leave. Okay, so just know that. That is your right. You are waiting for insurance to say, yes, we approve you, or we don't, we deny it. If they deny it, you can appeal, but you're going to have to leave the hospital. I don't think there's a way to stay. My understanding is you would have to leave and continue to fight it. Maybe had that happened, Mark would have gone to just a skilled nursing facility while we continued to fight it, because there's no way he could have come home because I can't pick him up. Anyhow, so that was kind of a little glitch. So the next day, I did find out that a doctor had clicked the wrong patient and had discharged Mark when he meant to discharge another patient. But again, that is being on top of things. People make a mistake. Again, I'm not blaming anyone at all. I'm just saying people do make mistakes. The doctor maybe had been on a long shift. Maybe they had similar names. I don't know. But he clicked the wrong button and Mark was considered discharged. So that happened. And again, had he been there by himself without an advocate or someone to speak up for him on his behalf, I really don't know how that would have turned out. So the next thing I do want to mention, because this happened too, is once Mark was scheduled, we were approved for him to go to the rehab. The transportation was all, arranged by the rehab, and they said the transportation will be there between 5 and 5:30. Transportation, I know this because I work in senior living and I've heard so many of these stories. Transportation is not necessarily going to be there on time. And so I had a feeling about it. So I said, okay, Mark is being discharged. They're supposed to come get him between 5 and 5:30, but could you please serve him dinner? Because I've heard too many stories of people that were being discharged around the same time. The transportation came late. They got to the rehab and it was too late for a meal. And so I did not want that to happen to him. So I made sure a meal came to him at 5:30 at the hospital. And thank God I did, because transportation did not show up until 7:30 or 8. I can't remember. It was late. He would not have had a meal. And I remember I was hungry because I had not had a meal. And again, everything's closed in the hospital. There's no cafeteria open because I have no idea what their hours are. Anyhow, so that happened. By the time we got him to the rehab, I had to come home, pick up his stuff, got to the rehab. I think it was like 9:30 at night. And I'm not going to lie, I was grumpy. I needed some medication. So I don't know if I should share that or not, but my gosh, you know what? I don't care. I needed some anxiety medication and I had some, thankfully. So that's what I'm saying. Again, it's about communication. It's about speaking up. And I will say that last day at the hospital, one of the nurses came in and she said, you are the most organized, on it person I have ever, dealt with. You've been on it. And I'm like, because I work in senior living and this is not my first rodeo. We have been down this road for almost 2.5 years now. So I know what to expect. But even then, there's always a new twist, which is why I'm sharing this with y'all. Another thing I thought was kind of important, I made a little note about this, is I think I want to just share this. I've shared this before, but I want to just share again how important it was. So we keep a list on our refrigerator of Mark's medications, everything he takes, what time of day he takes it, the milligrams, everything. We also have his allergies, we have his date of birth, and we have the hospital we want him to go to. And we also have his primary physician name and phone number on there. So this is good and kind of sad, quite honestly, but myself and my 2 kids have become just pros at this. So when we realized we couldn't get Mark off the floor, I said, I'm going to call 911. Mark said no, was yelling no. He was very upset. Chris stayed with Mark. I walked to the front of the house. I told Abby, who happened to be home for the weekend, so I'm calling 911. I called. We're just so calm now. I remember the first time I called 911, I was stuttering and I could hardly talk. This time I'm just here's our address. This is what's going on. We're fine, but he's on the floor. He's not hurt. We've checked him. We just can't get him up, and gave all the detail. They were here in just like 3 minutes. They came in, 6 big burly paramedics, firemen came in. Abby said, I'm going to get the list. She got the list from the refrigerator. Chris put Sadie, our golden retriever, before they got here in her kennel because we knew that could be very traumatizing to her because she's not aggressive or anything, but I don't know what she would do because she's very, very protective of Mark. Chris put her in the kennel. I was talking to the firemen, paramedics about what was going on with him. Chris was giving another one some information. Abby was over sharing all the information with the other one, all Mark's medications. And he's like, does he have allergies? And Abby's like, yes, he does. Here's his allergies. And, he said to her, wow, y'all are really organized, and I'm glad. I'm so proud of my kids. I'm so proud of them for staying calm in these emergencies now. And, I'm sad, on one hand that they have to be so calm because we've been through this so many times now, but, I'm just so proud of them too. So it ended up taking 4 of them to get him up, and they said, we think we should take him in, like I said, and they took him out. But I wanted to share that part with you just about that, being organized. And I've shared that before. Have that list on your refrigerator. It just makes life so much easier. And then I took it with me as well to the hospital so I could show it. And I did throughout the time we were there in the emergency room and then in the hospital, just to compare to make sure that we had the correct medication with the correct dosages. The other note that I made is I just kind of called it a go bag. You have to have a go bag with you when you go to the ER in the hospital. And so here's the things that I know. Take a blanket. It's cold. And I did not grab a blanket this time. I just kind of got dressed, and because I was in my pajamas. So I got dressed real quick. I'm trying to think what I did. Got my phone charger and ran out. I actually was right behind the ambulance the whole way to the hospital. But what you need to do is pack a go bag and take a blanket, because I don't know why I've never been so cold in my life. It's freezing in there. They did give me some warm blankets at one point. Take snacks, because if you get stuck in an ER for 15 hours, you get a little hungry. And just to have little snacks with you, because you can buy stuff in the hospital, but it's so expensive. And it's mostly, everything I found was kind of like junk food. So take like protein bars, things like that. I mean, I would take healthy snacks personally, because that was kind of hard to come by. This is my non-healthy snack. But if you are a Diet Coke person, because I am, take Diet Coke, because I don't know why. And I've said this before. This is my rant, y'all. Every hospital carries Pepsi products. Ugh. Sorry if you like Pepsi, but we're in Texas and it's Coke here. Okay. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but I just made that rule. It needs to be Coke or Diet Coke. So bring your Diet Coke with you, but definitely pack some healthy snacks, like a power bar, protein bar, fruit, things like that. And your medications. So if you have any medications that you take, I just thought about this when I was sitting there all those hours, and thankfully I had taken my medication before leaving. Not that I take a lot, but I have a couple of things. But if you have some medications, especially if you're older and you have blood pressure meds, that sort of thing, take your meds with you, because you don't know how long you're going to get stuck there, and you don't want to be without them, especially if perhaps they are like blood pressure meds or depression or anxiety, any kind of medication that you're going to need, because you know what? Your blood pressure is going to go up sitting in an emergency room, and your anxiety level is as well. So do that. So to kind of wrap it up with y'all, and like I said, this has been sort of unstructured, just kind of catching you up to my current life situation. Maybe there needs to be a second book about this. Although I've got some other books I want to write if I ever get the chance to. It may just be written on notes on my phone. But anyhow, the big takeaway here is you have to be an advocate. If you don't have an advocate, you need to talk to your family, your neighbors, somebody. Somebody needs to be your advocate should something happen to you. If you are the advocate or caregiver, you've got to be strong. You've got to speak up. You've got to argue in some cases, respectfully argue, but you've got to pay attention to things, pay attention when they come in and they repeat the medication, make sure they're telling you the right dosages, have your list, have a notebook, take whatever it is that you take notes on, whether it's your phone like me or a notebook, you need to take notes of what's going on. And if you are not getting good answers from a case manager, if they are blowing you off or don't seem to want to go a little extra to help you out, this is where you need to get help. Okay. You need to find someone who can help you figure this out. Maybe you ask for another case manager. If this one is not you don't feel is helping you, you call your insurance, call a senior living professional like me, someone who has been there, been through this and can help you. And just, don't take, if something feels wrong, like this felt wrong. I mean, I knew it was wrong, but it also felt wrong. Everything that the case manager was telling me, that your husband can't get rehab because of the diagnosis of weakness. I just knew this didn't make sense. There was more to this story. And I mean, if it doesn't make sense, if it feels in your gut, it feels wrong, then you need to stand up and ask for someone else, because your job as the advocate for the person you love is to make sure they get the best care and that they can return to the best quality of life possible. And that's always my goal. So with my husband, it's let's get him back to baseline. Let's get him back home. That's where he's happy. He's with our dog, Sadie. He's with his family. That's always my goal. So anyhow, that's a lot. That's what's been going on here. And, I hope that this reaches at least one person that it helps, because, to go through all this, like I said earlier, I just want some good to come out of it. So please share this with your friends, your family. Go and like and subscribe to the podcast. Go back, listen to our other podcasts that I've done. I've done a bunch, through the last 2 years on being a caregiver, on being an advocate, about hospitals, about rehabs, all this stuff. Educate yourself, because, odds are something's going to happen to someone you love at some point. We never know what life has in store for us. So there are resources there. So educate yourself, have a plan in place, and share this information with others. Thanks so much for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Aging in Style. Thanks so much. Take care, y'all. Bye.